Silas here, and today I wanted to start this video off with a definition of the word all-rounder. Basically, an all-rounder is a person who is generally good at a wide range of things, or skills maybe I would say, depending on how you look at it. But in this case, I think this word perfectly describes the Sony 24mm to 105mm F4 G OSS lens. So with that being said, let's dissect the lens a little bit. Not particularly a specs kind of person, but I think there are a couple of key aspects in this lens that makes it the best all-rounder lens on the market. The lens boasts a focal range starting from 24mm on the wider side and then 105mm on the more telephoto side. This is really great for solo filmmakers such as myself because I'm the only one who's filming whatever project I'm working on. This helps reduce the need to keep on switching lenses when I need to because I have such a wide range that's covered by this one lens. The Sony 24-105mm also has Sony's optical steady shot, or OSS for short. Basically, this means that the lens itself has stabilization in it. When you compare this with a camera body that has in-body image stabilization, or IBIS for short, you have an amazing foundation to work with, especially if you're doing a lot of run and gun or handheld work. The lens has a constant aperture of f4 throughout its focal range, which means that whenever I'm going from anywhere of 24mm zooming all the way to 105mm, the aperture doesn't change. It stays at f4. Now you can kind of see this as a downside because f4 isn't necessarily the best aperture to have, especially when you're filming in more dimly lit situations, but I'm going to get back to this later in the video. The lens is weather sealed with a rubber gasket at the mounting point, giving some needed protection for those who want to go out on those rainy days, and the lens weighs about 663 grams or 1.5 pounds, which is around the same weight as the Sony a7S III. As an all-rounder lens though, that also means that it's not really a master of anything. So if we take the 24mm for example, it's wide, but it's not as wide as say a 12mm. And when we look at the telephoto side of 105mm, it's pretty good, but it can't be compared to something like a 70-200 or a 100-400, which both really specialize in having a much longer reach so that you can film things that are much further away. I mentioned it earlier, but having a constant f4 aperture can be a turnoff to some people. If you didn't know, having a higher aperture or a slower aperture means that less light can get into the camera. So in this case, f4 isn't the highest number in the world, but it's not really a go-to when it comes to filming things in darker situations. This is why a popular choice for mid-range zooms is, for example, Sony's very own 24-70, Sigma's 24-70, or Tamron's 28-75, all boasting an f2.8. While they don't have as much range as the 24-105, that f2.8 aperture does allow for filming in darker situations to be much more manageable compared to the Sonys. A faster aperture also means that you can create a shallower depth of field, or bokeh, which basically just means that you can make the background more blurry, which is something what a lot of people look for when they want to make something look more cinematic. With that in mind, there are a few ways that the 24-105 can mitigate some of its weaknesses. When you're using a tighter focal length or closer to your subject, the shallower the depth of field. Take this footage, for example, of the same composition, but each shot at different focal lengths and distances of the same focal length. Notice how as the focal length gets tighter and as you get closer to the subject, the blurrier the background. Cameras of today's day and age are far more advanced than even cameras from just about a year ago. Low-light performance in cameras have improved significantly as well, allowing for more ISO to be pushed higher without ruining the image of the footage. That isn't necessarily to say it's a fix for Sony's f4 aperture, but it does allow for a lot of flexibility in when you're shooting at a darker location. I would say though, the best course of action would still be to use a prime, which usually has a faster aperture, typically of say f1.4 or f1.8, because this does allow for a lot more light into the camera. What really makes this lens great though, is the optical steady shot. I've already mentioned it earlier, but having any type of extra stabilization is amazing. Generally speaking, when you are filming at a wider focal length, the footage is much steadier compared to when you are filming at tighter focal lengths, say past 50mm. Having optical steady shot helps reduce the amount of jitters that this footage would have. For example, I've shot a proposal video for a couple once completely handheld with the 24-105, and the footage was extremely steady, even when it punched in all the way to 105mm. So, closing thoughts. The Sony 24-105mm is a fantastic multi-purpose tool for solo filmmakers, or anyone really. But just like a multi-purpose tool, each tool that is provided is limited in their use as they lack in specific specialization. A jack of all trades, but a master of none. I really love this lens, and I think a lot of people like to skip over it without giving it a fair chance when it's compared to its other mid-range zoom competitors. Do you think that the Sony lens is worth the money to purchase? Let me know what you think by commenting down below. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and also subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content from me in the future. Also make sure to hit that bell notification so that you're always notified whenever a new video comes out. Well, that's it for this video. I really hope that I was able to change your mind on the Sony 24-105mm if you are on the fence about purchasing it when you're comparing it to the other competitors as well. This has been Silas, and I hope to see you next time. Bye-bye.